welcome to Zoom at 8. My name is Anne Peterson. I'm with Old Capital Lending, and I want to welcome you to tonight's final speaker meeting with networking. This is our last meeting of 2021 with a speaker. We'll be here for another 2 weeks in between the holidays, and we'll get back to speaker meetings at the beginning of the year. So I'm really excited to have Andre Evans with us tonight. He is our speaker, and then after we listen at some of his amazing story, we'll be getting into networking. So a little bit about Old Capital. We've been around for over 35 years. We've closed over 6,000 multifamily loans. So that's a lot of loans. We're known for our execution certainty, especially in multifamily. Now we'll go into other asset classes, but we really are a specialist in multifamily, and that's kind of what we do. We talk about here on on the Zoom at 8. We're gonna go out in great style with Andre Evans, and he is our speaker tonight. And I met Andre at my meetup recently. I hold a meetup here in San Diego. And the other thing that I really like about Andre Evans is that he's from Chicago. He's from Chicago, Illinois. And, you know, he's a native of there. He joined a gang on the south side of Chicago at the age of 12. And after years of violence through fights and drive-by shootings and other actions, Andre decided to pursue a better path of life. So in 2016, he graduated from the US Naval Academy at the top of his class with a degree in engineering and became an MIT fellow and Truman Scholar. Andre's journey into real estate started when he bought his first $2 million 4-unit property. Do you hear that? $2 million for 4 units here in San Diego. Yes, that's right, in Pacific Beach. It's a submarket of San Diego. Things are expensive out here. 1 month later, he participated as a limited partner on a 7-unit syndication in Coronado. And Andre actively hosts a meetup called the San Diego Opportunity Knocks Real Estate and Financial Freedom. He is also featured on a local San Diego news show to talk about the economic outlook of the real estate trends, housing, and rent growth within San Diego. He is the founder and CEO of That's My Property, a real estate business that specializes in the acquisition of value-add apartment complexes that not only provides investors with lucrative, stable returns to achieve financial freedom, but also provides financial education and outreach to young adults and youth in underserved communities. My goodness, that last piece is amazing, and I got to hear more of it. Andre, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks for having me.
You can tell I'm pumped up because you're a local boy like me. I'm from Chicago, although in a little bit different area. So when you told me you were from Chicago, of course I got to talk to you and I got to know more about you. But when you told me you were in a gang, I had to know more. I don't know if you're open to sharing your story, but I got to hear, how is it that we get to be so lucky to, you know, hear your story and be with you? I'm just want to welcome you to all of the folks here that are anxious to hear your story and know more about you and how we can work with you.
Yeah, Julia, I just want to start off and say thank you for having me on the show. It's definitely an honor. It's definitely a privilege. And I know we had a vibe right away, just having that Chicago connection. Of course, it didn't always start off this way. Even with the Naval Academy, I was afraid they were going to kick me out when they found out about my background and my story, but it was the opposite effect. Just starting off, you know, I joined the gang when I was 12. And for me, violence it put a smile across my face. I enjoyed the fights. I enjoyed the drive-by shootings. Actually, part of my initiation, in addition to getting beat in, you have a bunch of guys that surround you and beat you in for a set amount of time. So for me, it was about 10 to 15 minutes. And I did a drive-by shooting on a guy that actually beat up my brother when we were a little bit younger. And that was my initiation. I had to prove to them that I can hold my own weight. and that I could defend and support them, if things ever went down in the city when we were out on the streets. And that was really what it started from there. And so I was in the gang for about a couple years, and I came to a point where eventually my stepdad, who came in my life, my mom met him. He was an army guy. He was in the army for about 4 years. He came home one day. I'm a triplet, so it's three of us. He came home one day and he's like, "Hey, you guys should check out this school called West Point." And we're like, "No, bro, we don't. That's the army. We're not going to the Middle East. We're not doing that." And my mom, even she was like, "No, we're not doing that." Nobody in our family was in the military, so we shut it down. And he kept coming home, and he kept coming home, and he kept speaking about this school called West Point. And so eventually they had a like symposium seminar about an hour out in the suburbs of Chicago. So we drive out there and we meet this guy called Colonel Banks, and he was the first male that I had ever met, an African American male for that matter, that had a PhD and 5 master's degrees. And that was very significant for me because a lot of the male role models in my life never did anything. I joined the gang in the first place, the gang of disciples, because my biological father was a drug addict. He's not in my life. I don't know him at all. And my mom has 4 brothers, my 4 uncles. They're all in the streets. They're still addicted to drugs to this day. All my cousins were a part of the streets or addicted to drugs. So I never really had a true male role model looking up. I just had my mom and my grandmother. And just so to see a male figure in front of you, he's in his dress blue army uniform. He speaks intelligent. He's got his head hanging up, the way he walked, the way he stride. It was eye opening for me. And so he told me and my brothers about this program called SLS, was the summer leadership seminar where we would go to West Point for a week. And he was like, "Hey, I see your sons are from the South Side. I'll work with the school. Just go for free. Go for the week. Experience what life is like as a cadet at West Point." So we go there. I get off the bus, and this guy starts yelling at me, and like I reach behind, out of habit, thinking that I'm strapped or whatever, that I have a gun to pull out from my waistband. And I realize that I don't, because I'm in this different environment. So I'm yelling back at him. I'm cursing back at him, reacting the way I normally would react. And then, of course, a bunch of the other midshipmen, well, not midshipmen, they're cadets at West Point, they start coming over. So now I got this group of cadets surrounding me that are like juniors and seniors, and they're all yelling in my face, telling me what to do. And you learn very quickly that it's a different culture there. And it was a big culture shock for me for that one week. But at the same time, I walked away from it different. I was still a part of the gang once I got back to Chicago, but that experience changed me. It was the first time in my life where I felt free, and it was the first time in my life where I was in an environment where it felt like everyone cared about my development. It was a leadership laboratory, you know, and the turning point for me when I came back from West Point, I had a friend whose nickname I call Boogie, and I got a text from him to meet him outside when I got out of class in high school. And so we're on this corner. On this corner on the south side of Chicago, there was like a little J&J like fish place where you can get like chicken wings or fish or just things of that nature, or soda. And then there was like a Dollar Tree Family Dollar store like right behind it. And so in Chicago, at least, you learn very quickly to be aware of your surroundings. And so you see this car that keeps passing by a couple times, and eventually we're like, you see that car keeps circling around, like, what is this? And so eventually it comes around that last time, and you see the window drop, and you see the guy that comes out with the semi-automatic, and he starts shooting at us. And so me and Boogie are like ducking and dodging, going through this parking lot in this Dollar Tree parking lot, just bobbing and weaving through the cars. And the car speeds off, and I'm like yelling Boogie's name and yelling his name and yelling his name, and I don't hear anything. I don't get a response. And so, I start, you get that pump in your chest, and you start like, oh my God, like I hope that, my friend's okay. And eventually I'm like looking, and I see a pair of legs that are like sitting up like this. And so I go to the car, and Boogie's like leaned up against the car crying, because just the other night he reflects that he had a conversation with his mom. His mother knew that he was a part of a gang, and she was trying to get him to, turn his life around. She was a Christian woman. It was different for me because my brothers and my mother never knew I was in. My brothers, we were triplets, and obviously, like, we're very close to this day. But we had very different upbringings because of what I did, and they were more video game people, and they would stay home and just play video games all day while I was out in the streets, and they never knew. Not knowing also too that I was protecting them. There were people that had hits out against my brothers or were trying to fight them or whatever it may be, and I was protecting them, and they didn't even know it. So that was also the motivation of just joining. And so eventually I couldn't sleep that night, and the next day I confronted the gang leader, who's got, for the nickname purposes and safety, his he went by the name of Smoke, and I confronted them and I was like, "Yo, I want out. This isn't for me, and I feel like I have this opportunity to do something better." And so, just like I was had to get beat in and do things to get in the gang, they were going to beat me out, and they were just about to beat me out, and Smoke stopped it, and he said something that I'll never forget, and he gave me an opportunity that I'll never forget. And he was like, "Listen, Dre, you have always stood your ground. We've always respected you, and we always felt like you've been different. The way you carried yourself, you've always kind of been a visionary, and you always inspired us." And that was that first taste for me in terms of that motivation and my ability to be a natural leader and inspire people. Because if I can inspire people in a gang, in a street gang, and we're not saying like we're not just doing fights, like, we're doing actual criminal acts. We're like engaging in violence. And if I can inspire those type of people, then who else can I not inspire? And they had knew my family. They knew things about me, obviously, because we were like a little family. And they saw that, and they knew that I had the opportunity to go to West Point, and they didn't know what it was, but they knew that I had an opportunity to get out of Chicago. And then they was like, "Hey, like, as long as you put on for the city, for lack of better terms, and make something of your life, we support that. We're good with that." And so I eventually had the opportunity. I went to the Naval Academy. I wasn't smart enough necessarily to get direct enrollment, so I went to the prep school in Naps in Newport, Rhode Island for a year, and I struggled. It was a 1.2 GPA to graduate. I barely graduated because I was trying to learn all the bad habits and studies that I needed to get together. And somehow, some way, I went to the Naval Academy. My gift has always been to draw. I've always been an artist. And honestly, I picked engineering because I was like, what's the closest thing to art? And be able to design things. And so I went to the Naval Academy and majored in engineering for that reason. And if somehow, some way, study and apply myself, because I knew that there were a lot of people that thought that I wasn't going to make it through the prep school. They were like, and then once I graduated from that, they were like, "Okay, let's see if you graduate from Annapolis." you know. And I had a lot of my cousins being killed while out during my first year as a freshman, so I had to battle that. I was still beefing with my stepdad. My stepdad was physically and emotionally abusive to my mom a lot, so we would fist fight and go through a lot of things, and so that was also always on my plate. And also just the struggle. Even though I went through naps, I still struggled a lot with that first year because I was I had to learn how to control those tendencies that I had, those bad habits of just being in a street gang, and in terms of lashing out in my attitude and my anger and talking out and not taking orders. And now I'm in this military environment. I'm being groomed to be an officer. I'm a midshipman at the Naval Academy, and that brings a certain caliber and that brings a certain reputation. And so long story short, I eventually, like I said, majored in engineering. I did a lot of outreach. Naval Academy found out about my background. I thought they were going to kick me out, but it was the opposite effect. They supported me. So next thing I know, every weekend I'm traveling around. I spoke to them. I was in Compton and met the mayor. Spoke to the football team for their homecoming. I was in St. Louis. I was in Atlanta, Chicago multiple times, Detroit. So just all around the country speaking, and that's where the motivational speaking came from, and doing all the outreach. And that's where I became passionate from it. And that stemmed with the leadership I was doing. I became the highest ranking midshipman at the Naval Academy, and all the spotlight in the media that came with that. And so then I was able to graduate. And then my real estate journey came out when I came here to San Diego. I bought a little condo, and for me, I still had that South Side of Chicago kid mentality that I just want to buy a dream home so that when my family comes out to beautiful San Diego, they have a place to stay. And that's where my head was at. And I got back from deployment, and I was like, I'm going to sell this condo, and then I'm going to get a 4-unit, a 4-bedroom place. And then I would have made it. That's the dream. And there was a supply corps officer, which is one of the jobs that we have, titles that we have in the military that you can do. And I had a buddy named Keegan. He was from North Chicago. We met up for coffee, and he at this point he had been out of the Navy for 2 years, and he told me about multifamily because I'm venting to him saying how I wrote my memoir. I wrote a book, and I'm like, until that gets released, I don't have any other way to like move my mom out of Chicago or just try create some type of legacy wealth. So I'm venting to him across this coffee table in Starbucks, and he's like, you should buy a multifamily. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. And he's trying to explain it to me. And I'm like, I don't get it, bro. And so I think that I don't know what you all believe in, the universe, God, whatever, but I personally believe in God. So whether it be God or the universe, um, I feel like the universe is laughing at me. And it was like, let me show you what I mean. So we get in my car and we drive literally down a block down the street and we pull up into this in front of this complex. Now, funny story, when I came back from deployment, the city of San Diego was shut down. There was because of COVID, even the gyms. So, but there was one gym in particular that was owned by a veteran called Grinders Gym, called by the name of David Depew. And so when I first went to that gym, I parked on that same street where that complex is at. Now, mind you, that whole complex that I later found out, every multifamily property on that street in Bay Park is owned by a Naval Academy grad or a West Point grad. Didn't even know it. So when we pull up, I'm like, oh my God, this is the same property that I thought that was really nice because it had like a rooftop thing on the very top where they had like a cabana and chairs and stuff. It just really modern looking. It was really cool looking. That was Keegan's next door neighbor. And he takes me to the top floor of this triplex and he sits down. We open up Redfin, we open up Home Snap, and he shows me how to analyze a property. And it's just kind of like a water hose just coming at me for the next 2 hours. And it's all going over my head. I'm not really understanding it, but I leave that day and I'm pretty quiet. And Keegan reflected back earlier, saying that he felt like I like was out of it because I didn't say anything. But it was the opposite effect. I was so inspired and I felt like multifamily just got placed in my lap. And so from there, I was obsessed. I read every book I could on multifamily investing. I listened to every Bigger Pockets podcast. And then from there, anything that had multifamily related, I listened to it, webinars, articles, whatever, and I educated myself. And I was looking at deals every single day. Anything that came on MLS in San Diego, I was on it. And that's how I learned the market. I learned all the submarkets of San Diego because I was constantly underwriting the deals and I was constantly driving the neighborhoods. And obviously that taught me a lot. Going to to the real estate meetup groups, making connections, that taught me a lot because in that you learn property managers, you meet with brokers, you meet with appraisals, I built a team of handymen. So all those connections, all those lessons learned, and I was just building this network, building this foundation. And I was looking and looking and looking, and eventually I found this $1.9 million property in PB. It was a 4 unit. And having looked, I understood the San Diego market. You know, small multifamily is the backbone foundation of San Diego. That's what makes our market very unique. You know, we only have so many, large multifamily here, especially with all the ADU laws that you can do and be unique in terms of like adding value in San Diego. And also too, a lot of the properties that I had learned were all one unit mixes, or you have a three two house in the front, but then you have ones in the back. But what's unique about the fourplex that I knew was a steal, well, one, it was in PB, and that's one of the hottest areas of San Diego. There were 4 units. They were all 2 bedroom, 2 bath townhomes with a patio. The front of the property has a huge courtyard, and it was just artificial turf. So I had that vision of a value add. I can add like a cabana, I can add a jacuzzi, things of that nature, make it like a short-term rental, like cash cow. And then I had laundry in the back, income. And then I had each parking space, each unit had 2 parking spots, which is also understanding the market and rare in, Pacific Beach. A lot of the coastal communities have a struggle with parking. And the last thing was the exit strategy. I could either sell the complex as it is, but they were also individually parceled. So because they were full 2 bed, 2 bath townhomes, on exit, I could sell each one individually. And that's where the journey started. I was in escrow for 4 months because I used my VA loan to do it. I got lucky because I had studied and studied and studied, and I saved and saved and saved. Because growing up, we had always been paycheck to paycheck, and I built this strong financial foundation. Next thing I know, I had saved up a good amount of money. So when I needed those amount of reserves to qualify for the loan, even though the loan is zeroed down, it's not really zeroed down because you need the 20 grand for the earnest money deposit. And I needed 6 months reserves on a $1.9 million property. So, and even with all of that, they still didn't think no one had ever closed on a $2 million property using a V loan. I was the first.
Mm.
So it was unheard of. And the lenders were like making up all types of things as I went through escrow. I closed on December 24th on Christmas Eve last year. And the next thing I know, a month later, I did my LP deal in Coronado. for 7 units. And that allowed me to get that syndication on training wheels. And I learned everything I could. I asked a bunch of questions. And then next thing I know, I met my business partners in Del Mar, and did my first syndication. I raised capital, and I closed on a 12 unit in the Golden Hill market of San Diego. And all of those are short-term rentals. We actually finished the renovations last week. And then we finished that. And then shortly after that, I closed on 75 units in Texas, the Brunson College Station, Texas area. And that was 4 weeks ago. So we closed on that as a GP. And obviously, I learned a lot of lessons I learned from raising capital and doing investor relations and providing that insight into multifamily on the 12 unit that carried over to the 75 unit, because in the 75 unit there were a lot more experienced operators. One of the buddies I had known for years, he's at about 300 doors right now. He's a Naval Academy graduate, and he was the one that I had been keeping in contact with for years. And eventually he was like, "Dre, it's time. Let's do a deal together." And that's how that came in that fold, and started the Ike AK, who's on this podcast, this show right now. We started the Multifamily by the Slice podcast, which is supposed to launch. It's not Friday, Monday next week. So we've got about 20 episodes already covered. We're going to launch 6, so I'm excited for that. And then I run a real estate meetup group here in San Diego, and we have about 60 people on average. Our next event is actually this Thursday, and so all that happened in December 24th will mark a year in terms of me being in the multifamily space. So it's scaled and has grown quite fast in that journey.
Wow. Take a breath. My goodness, that is a lot. Amazing success. Incredible history. The story is just, I'm just overwhelmed by it. Being able to recognize that you could have a better life is just amazing, that you were able to recognize that and take the steps to do that. Where are you at with this, your stepdad? Is he obviously inspired you, right? And you're grateful for that. Sounds like, do you have still a relationship with him, and recognize that he obviously put a bug in you to better your life as well?
Yeah, it was weird because obviously I wouldn't even have went to the Naval Academy if it wasn't for him.
Sure.
Obviously we learned about the Naval Academy knowing that there were other service academies, even though he mentioned West Point. But it was the abusiveness and everything that allowed us to be at war for over 11 years. And my mom is a very big church-going, prayerful woman, and she had already been through a divorce with my first biological father. So she, to this day, I'm not sure why she never divorced the man, but I always wondered that growing up. I'm like, how could you go through all this and not leave him? Because she admitted before, when I wrote the memoir, she was like, there were a lot of moments where she felt like leaving, and I could understand it because he was a lot. I mean, he would literally come home and take his anger out on her for no reason, and it wasn't
Some ways
until
maybe he helped save you guys from
yeah,
future problems.
that's what's
I'm
weird
I-
about it.
I'm curious. I'm curious about your brothers. Where are they today?
Alex is active duty. He is a cyber information protection officer stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. And then Anthony works for the Secret Service. He went through quite the journey. So me and my brothers were the first African American tribbles to be accepted to any service academy. It was a big deal when we got accepted. We would have made history if we would have graduated together. But freshman year, Anthony got kicked out. He got into a lot of academic trouble, and he was kicked out, which was a pretty heavy blow for us because he was doing our finals. And I came home, and the next thing I know, he went to DC. He started working at GNC, and then he started working at Target, and then he became a cop in DC. He worked his way up, did the police academy. Then he met an FBI agent that through the police academy who became his mentor. And then he met a gentleman that was on Obama's Secret Service staff. And then they continued to mentor him and groom him. And eventually they put that bug in his ear, like, hey, you should apply for the Secret Service. He applied, and he's been doing it for years now.
But what a real inspiration and success story that all of you were able to get out of the gang infested areas to better yourselves, better your life, not stay in that without support necessarily from your dad, right? So, I mean, great job, and so proud to know you.
Thank you, Julie.
Yeah. And so you look back, and sometimes, this real estate gig can be quite grueling, right? I mean, it
Mhm.
can be maybe sometimes as challenging as being in a gang. You got to go through so much to get a deal, right? What do you find to be one of your biggest challenges now you've been doing this for, owning, but getting into it? What do you think is you find to be a challenge when you wake up? What do you think one of your biggest challenges are in multifamily, in your real estate business? It can't be as bad as where you were.
I think for me, I'm constantly trying to challenge myself to, again, be out of that kid from Chicago mentality. It's hard.
Mm.
It's the best way I can explain it to you is this. A lot of kids on the South Side grow up and we're like, I hope I make it to 21.
Mm.
And you'll find that that's the majority. And I understand it because you got to look from our perspective, right? If all we hear and see, if a lot of our friends and family members have been killed, if
Yeah.
we hear the gunshots from our home, or especially if we partook in it, like in my case, or we know people that partook in it, and you see it on the news, it's almost like it's glorified. So a lot of people, we're not necessarily numb to it, but you walk around, you're like, yeah, 50 shooters over the weekend, cool, another Chicago day. And you're not trying to make light of it, but it's just like that's what we're used to. Like that's our reality. And so growing up, again, a lot of youth would just be like, I hope I make it to 21. But it had the opposite effect of me. Like being in that environment and being in the gang, I think for me, I had the opposite effect where I was just like, well, why not better? Like, why can't I leave? Like, why can't I have better? And I think that visionary
Mm.
mindset has carried me into multifamily a lot because I definitely look at like my business, the name that's my property, or just being an affirmation and just the things I've been able to accomplish, just not taking no for an answer and just realizing again that I've been through worse and being thankful that I'm here in San Diego, being thankful that I'm a multifamily investor. So my biggest challenge is dreaming big because
Mm.
it was a struggle to believe that I could do that first deal. But like Michael Blanc says always on his podcast, the law of the first deal. And I believed in that
Mhm.
because my mom, my folks, they were all like, that's stupid. Why would you buy a $2 million property in San Diego? Especially when I was in escrow for 4 months, and they're like, that's a sign from God. And I was like, oh, you can't apply that on me. Like
Mm.
just because you face adversity. And it was the first time I ever like talk back to my mom because I've always respected her. She's never had to yell at me. I was always in trouble, but like I always respected her. She never had to yell. That was like the rule in the house. If mama said it, you just shut up and listen and you did it. And so I, for the first time, clapped back because I was like, Mom, that's not fair. I'm literally, if I don't do this, what else am I supposed to do? Live paycheck to paycheck in the Navy? You know what I'm saying? If I don't do this, life is so short. Like the greatest potential is in the graveyard. So it's like, if I don't do this, I don't have any other choice. I don't have anything else that I can possibly do. And I've been educating myself. I believe in this. I know it's PB. I know the area. I got to do this deal. And I know that I'm going to get 2,900 a month on each unit. I
Mhm.
know it. And so I didn't listen and I continued to go through it. And I was also in escrow for so long because I was getting hit with fees because we were extending and the agent was getting upset
Mm.
and just believing in myself. And I think after I crossed that hurdle, it was easier to dream bigger. So I think the long answer to your question is just constantly believing that I can go bigger and do bigger. And I think as I go from deal to deal, I continuously come outside of that box. Like I'm telling myself, you know what, this year I got to do 20 or 30 units in San Diego County and I got to do 100 unit outside of state. Like continuously dreaming bigger for 2022 in what I'm trying to accomplish.
Well, and I think you probably have some big fans here that will help you do that. I can only imagine how, listening to your story. Now, your story is here with 35 people here currently, but it goes out to everyone. And I suppose that, I feel so inspired by you and your story that others can also feel, they also feel that same. I'm curious if there's any words of wisdom for somebody that struggles with mindset, like you talk about, just being able to be capable. What's your words of wisdom to them?
Sticky notes.
Sticky notes.
Sticky notes. That's the purpose of that's my property logo. You can see
Mm,
it behind me in the background. That's the Chicago skyline with a sticky note. I'm a big person on affirmations. You trick myself mentally. So that was another thing that helped me change my mindset to get out of Chicago and to get into multifamilies. Every day I wake up at 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. because I'm still active duty. I still am. So I have to work
okay.
from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. I go to base, I work a regular day, and then I hit the gym. And then after the gym, I work, it's through the nighttime, or I give up my weekends to work. And that's how I run my business. But it's waking up every day, taking a notepad, writing out my goals every day and what I want to accomplish in physically, and my body and my health, my real estate goals, and then my personal goals. And then I have a note, and then also have it written down in my car. So every time I get in my car, I have to say it to myself every single time I get in my car,
Love
because I'm
it.
constantly trying to trick myself and believe that, like, if I don't believe it, if I keep saying it to myself, eventually I'll believe it. And the
Yeah.
mind has a powerful and unique way of believing that. So it's like, if I don't, I can write down I'm gonna own $1 billion of real estate, and that's an audacious goal, or I'm gonna acquire 300 units in this year, or whatever it may be. But if you keep saying it to yourself, that's how you and you write it out, that's how you eventually get to that. Because your mind is now gonna go about the day. You're gonna be like, okay, how do I go about this? Who do I need to meet? Next thing you know, you're gonna be on Meetup, and you're gonna be looking at all the real estate meetup groups in San Diego, or whatever your market is. And you're gonna go to every single meetup. And the next thing you know, you're gonna go to the meetup. You're like, okay, it's 30 of you people in here. I can't talk to just one of you for a long time. So all right, I'm gonna do hot potato, and I'm gonna talk to all of you for 5 minutes, and I'm gonna get all your business cards, and I'm gonna harass all of you. I'm gonna contact all of you, and I'm gonna have coffee dates with all of you. And I don't know, even if I get one relationship out of it, I that's the relationship that I was supposed to get. That was the person
Yeah.
I was supposed to vibe with, and that's what it is. But in the next thing you know, that person knows another person, and then, like, that's where deals come. That's where broker relationships come from. That's where property managers come from. That's where the network comes from. You just It just goes from there. Like, your network is your net worth. And that's truly the truth.
Probably as a gang member, you'd never thought that you would be sitting here telling your story. Maybe you didn't even think that you'd get out alive, but I have to think, deep down inside, there's you must be so, so proud of yourself. And I would tell you that all the people on here in the audience are so, so proud of you. And I just want to open it up to the audience to see, is there anybody that has any questions or comments? I think that we'd love to hear from you. Cameron, what do you got?
Uh, I think number one, man, I thank you for your service. Two, I share a very similar story to you, so I totally get it. I understand, and it's very encouraging for someone like myself that comes from the single family ownership space, trying to cross over. I won't even use that weak word. Trying, working on the transition to multifamily,
Hmm.
to really have someone that really understands that mind shift from, it's always playing in the back of your mind, like what you're really totally used to and how not to react when circumstances present themselves. So I commend you, and I'm proud of you. I don't even know you, but
Mhm.
I feel very connected to you, and man, keep doing what you're doing. You're crushing it.
Thank you.
Make sure you guys connect. I love that, Cameron, and I hope to know more of your story. Candace, what do you got?
Wow. Well, first of all, thank you for being so transparent and sharing all that. Just amazing.
Yeah.
My question to you, even though I didn't grow up in the inner city, I had some similar experiences as a child, and remember having one person say one thing to me when I was in first grade that was the one thing that I held on to that got me to where I am today. And my family wasn't supportive of where I am today. And I remember that. And I want to be able to, part of going into multifamily investing is to give back. That is the main reason why I'm getting into it. And in doing so, I want to be able to possibly touch that one child to give them an idea or just a thought that they can perhaps carry, plant the seed. And I'm just wondering, in your experience, how are you doing that now to impact, are you doing like just constantly going around traveling and speaking, or do you go to local schools and try to sit in a classroom?
Great question.
It shifted. I'll be getting with COVID, it makes it harder, but I'll keep going back to the outreach and doing the speaking. But it shifted in a better way though with real estate. And I'll say that because speaking in prisons and speaking to youth and underserved communities, it's hard to reach them. I used to take it personal because I would walk in and like give them my whole like heart, and I would get frustrated because I'm like, I'm gonna say all of this stuff to these guys, and then it's gonna be like one of them that's gonna like really take this and make something better of their life. And I think I'm more inspired through real estate because a youth, young adult, however you want to classify it, they will respect a property, a sexy property, like they will a car. It's cool to them. So what I'm doing now is I have two advantages now. I can either host them at a property that's either mine or through my network and show them, right? And speak to them there, because now I can touch you a different way. The other way I like to do it is that I can do it now with the real estate as the foundation, as the business, is being able to educate them about financial literacy and educate them about real estate. And that's different because usually when you're speaking to them, you're trying to motivate them, but I don't really have as much to offer them. And so now I'm taking that's my property as a way to have them walk around and claim that's my property. I'm taking my business and teaching them about financial literacy and teaching them about real estate, and they can see it, they can touch it, they can feel it as a way to inspire them. But that also includes the books. So they're currently like 3 books in the works right now. The memoir, which is going to be released, the ebook that I'll give away for free on the website that's being redesigned about how I got started in real estate. And then the final thing that I'm really trying to push is the comic book. So I'm currently working on a Marvel style comic book that teaches youth how to buy a 100-unit apartment complex. So it's basically going to be the Rich Dad, Poor Dad in comic book form, but a mindset of how to buy an apartment complex. So the superheroes, everything in there, the villains all represent challenges that you will face as a multifamily investor in trying to buy a 100-unit. And then the protagonist, the main hero, is Michael, who has powers and all that storyline, but that is in the works. But that is, again, another unique way to give back to them, to reach youth, to reach young adults in a way that it hasn't been seen yet, if that makes sense.
That's beautiful. That's brilliant. That's exactly, I'm definitely going to connect with you afterwards and make a plan. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I love that you're making it possible to show them it's possible. I think that's the beauty in this, what you're doing. Okay.